Some trials, they're all about data. The evidence is technical, analytical, numbers on a chart. Some trials are all about stories, the witnesses, what they witnessed, how they acted then, how they act on the stand. And then there's the Karen Read trial, right? Actually, Karen Read trials, right? So today alone, day 6 of testimony in Read's second trial for allegedly killing her boyfriend, the jury got everything I just described and more. The drama came from a prosecution witness named Jennifer McCabe, reprising her testimony about the night John O'Keefe was either hit and killed by Karen Read's SUV, as prosecutors claim, or was beaten to death inside of a house party where McCabe was also a guest, as the defense claims. Now, on the technical side, the defense put a ding in the prosecution's theory that the victim never set foot in the house where Read dropped him off, because for one thing, his iPhone apparently showed he walked at least 36 steps. For another, the defense asserted it was possible O'Keefe unlocked his phone with Face ID and possibly looked at a text. And as it happened, that text was from Jennifer McCabe. On the stand today, just as she did at last year's trial, McCabe described Karen Read as hysterical, screaming, repeating herself over and over when John didn't come home. She talked about the broken taillight on Karen Read's Lexus. She claimed Read said, "Did I hit him? Could I have hit him?" And when she described finding John O'Keefe in the snow, she seemed to tear up. Well, sort of. You be the judge.
When you see Carrie removing the snow from John's face, what do you do?
I was frozen. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that was him just lying there.
Tell us what you're seeing.
What do I see? I see Carrie just wiping the snow off. Karen had straddled him and had lifted her shirt and his shirt and was laying on him, and Carrie was screaming at her to get off of him. And I was literally just stunned. I mean, there he was.
What did John look like when you saw him?
I couldn't see much but his face, because the rest was snow and Karen was moving over him, but he just looked like just him, but just like frozen.
What did you do?
At first, I just stood there for a minute because I couldn't believe it was him. And then Carrie Roberts and I made eye contact. And I knew, I was like, all right, I'm going to call 911. But I think I knew in that moment that John, was dead.
Now, McCabe's testimony ended today just before her infamous Google search, how long to die in the cold, how long to die in the cold. There was a misspelling there. That's coming tomorrow, along with what's sure to be a really interesting cross-examination. Let's talk about it. I'm joined right now by Mark Bederow, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor who's been following the case since the beginning. He almost joined the defense team, in fact, and currently represents the blogger known as Turtle Boy, who's been covering the case. Mark, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so was today a major win for anybody?
I think the defense had a very good day today, not so much with Jennifer McCabe, who's still on direct examination, so they haven't been able to establish anything with her yet, but the witness before her, the cell phone expert for the prosecution, a man named Ian Whiffen, who is supposed to be a very compelling and necessary witness for the prosecution if they're going to win this case. And what you had was the defense put some dents into the prosecution's case by having the witness concede that he could not exclude that John O'Keefe did not go in the house, that his phone did not go into the house. He established that John O'Keefe's phone was used at 12:32 a.m., which is important because the prosecution's theory is that he was struck and killed by a car at 12:31, and it begs the obvious question, how could he be using his phone, his Face ID, touching the side of it if he's already hit?
But just to press you on that, I mean, they also said the phone was inactive from 12:31, 12:32 until 6 a.m. And here's the thing. So Mr. Whiffen, I think, is an important witness. Why? A few things. So he said yesterday that it would be a reasonable assumption that the phone was by the flag post, right? That was by the yard, meaning that the phone never went into the house. Also talked about the temperature of John O'Keefe's phone, that it started decreasing quite rapidly, which would indicate that the phone was outside outside and never inside the house. And if we say we're coupling the phone with John O'Keefe, it helps the prosecution say that John O'Keefe never was in the house. That felt like compelling evidence and something that the prosecution has been relying on, because I don't remember from the first trial, at least the battery evidence.
No, I don't think there was the battery evidence in the first trial, but I'm not sure it actually helps the prosecution as much as people think, because although the temperature clearly came down on the battery, it kind of levels out dramatically several hours later and drops at a much less rate of temperature drop, which may suggest it was actually in some other place, a garage or some other location, not just sitting outside. And the expert did his own test showing that a phone would drop precipitously, the temperature would continue to drop, but there's no explanation for why at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, it would just, the rate of decline would stop dramatically.
So let's talk about phones for a second. Let's talk about Jennifer McCabe. Really, the big thing is how long to die in the code. Now, the defense would say she looked that up at 2:25,
2:27.
2:27, yep. Right, before John O'Keefe's body was discovered. She'd only be looking that up if she was part of the cover-up. She knew that he was dead. She was a part of it. Now, the prosecution put in evidence from this expert to say, wait a minute, she had opened up a tab earlier on in the day to look for something else, and you can use that tab to look something up at 6:30 in the morning or 6 in the morning. The timestamp would say, this timestamp wouldn't change, but it doesn't necessarily mean you look for that. You search for that at 2 something in the morning, which, by the way, if she really did search for that, she searches for that and then looks up the other miscellaneous things she's looking at. She's a part of a murder and then looks up, what, sports teams or things like that. That's the part that seems, to me at least, that seems compelling evidence that she had a window open but didn't really search for how long to die in the cold until after John O'Keefe's body was found. What's your answer to that?
Well, in the first instance, you have to consider the full context of the 2:27 search. There's going to be evidence, as there was in the first trial, that at 2:22 and 2:23, two other key witnesses, Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, were apparently butt-dialing each other back and forth.
That's weird. Yeah, I agree with you. It's weird.
And that's followed right after this alleged Google search. Now, the prosecution expert clearly says, look, it wasn't at 2:27. He's using his own program, by the way, that he created. The defense is going to have an expert who's going to say it was at 2:27 and it was a deleted search, one of only 4,500 approximate searches on her phone. One was deleted. It just happened to be that one.
But doesn't it seem like if she really was part of this cover-up, this murder, she'd be a little more panicked? Here's the part that I don't understand, okay, right? I don't understand the motive. And I know motive's not an element of a crime, and especially for the defense, they don't have to prove it. But I can understand the prosecution story here, that either Karen Reed was so upset at John O'Keefe, she deliberately backed up the SUV to run him over, might be shaky, or that she was heavily intoxicated, ran him over recklessly, realized she might have done it, you know, couple that with the idea of, did I hit him questioning it. I don't quite understand what would be the motive for John O'Keefe to go in that house. There's some fight that breaks out. They beat him up, leave him to die, put him outside, and then, my goodness, they frame Karen Reed, and how lucky for them that she goes, you know, and says, you know, allegedly, I hit him, you know, says things that implicate herself. It seems to me, I just don't understand what would be the reason that he would be killed by people in that house.
Well, you may not know the reason, but the framework of the defense starts with science before you even get to what happened in the house. They're going to have expert witnesses, biomechanical engineers, and people with degrees that could go on longer than our arms. And what these individuals are going to say is that there was no accident that's consistent with the damage on the vehicle and damage with the car. And certainly the science would control. And you have to also factor in the burden of proof here. The defense has no burden.
Sure.
Prosecution's got to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. If these witnesses are credible that there was no accident, then the rest of this is all excess.
I agree, and I've said this to you before we went on air. I cover cases all the time where you hear the defense say this is a tainted investigation, the investigators had tunnel vision. It's a common argument. This is the only one where I say you actually should really listen up. I think they were given a gift with Michael Proctor, okay, lead investigator in this case, right? Completely sloppy, said horrible things about Karen Reed. I get it. But the idea that taillight would be taken and planted at the scene, that there would be this deliberate effort to frame Karen Read. There's so much effort to be put into that. The jury might not need a motive, and they might not need an explanation, but don't they have to say what's reasonable here, what's common sense?
You do, but again, you start with the science. If there is no car accident, but there are 45 or thereabout taillight pieces scattered along the lawn, then how did they get there? If it's not a natural consequence of a car accident, then they got there in some other way. And, you know, your first instinct is to say, come on, how could that be? But then you enter the world of Michael Proctor, and it's not just that he's sloppy, he's corrupt. I mean, he's terminated from employment because of his conduct in this case. He was found to have been biased in this investigation, amongst other things. Beyond looking for nudes, beyond wishing that she would kill herself.
Horrible.
He was found to be biased, so it becomes more plausible. Is there a timeline that it fits? The evidence is going to show in this case that there is a timeline, and then you get to a series of text messages and behavior by Jennifer McCabe, Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, and others who begin texting each other in the days following in a way that is not natural or normal for people who are doing nothing but grieving the loss of their friend.
I agree with you. There's weird stuff, right? Yeah. Why did Brian Albert allegedly not come out of the house? Why was his house not searched? I get it. There's weird stuff. There's a lot for the defense to work with, and she's got great lawyers. Here's the part. Talking about Jen McCabe, right? She said how hysterical Karen Read was, that she was screaming over and over, that Read allegedly said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? You couple that with Read's statements that she did in the media, which are key pieces of evidence for the prosecution here about speculating if she hit John O'Keefe. You couple that with the testimony of the first responder, Timothy Nuttall, who said, you know, Karen Read said, I hit him. It feels hard to square away why she would have said those things unless she might have had an indication she thought she hit him.
Well,
and let me just add one more thing. The testimony today, too, that while they're searching for John O'Keefe in the snow, Karen Read says, there he is, there he is. How did she know where the body was?
Well, I don't know how she knows where the body is. They're driving there. She comes upon the scene. She sees it. But again, when you talk about statements of did I hit him versus I hit him, you have to consider the credibility of the witnesses. I mean, you take the first witness, the EMT Nuttall. He's a guy who the evidence showed testified a year before that he was as certain as anything that John O'Keefe was wearing a puffy coat like the Michelin Man would wear, right? And it turns out he was wearing a light hoodie, and that he then said his memory got better a year later. He said I heard him say, I heard her say, excuse me, I hit him twice after I met with the prosecution and another investigator. Now I heard it 3 times. Then you heard Jennifer McCabe say today, well, Karen says everything in 3s. I mean, it feels somewhat contrived.
What are you expecting from Jennifer McCabe's testimony tomorrow? What do you expect the defense to do?
Well, I expect them to expose a series of inconsistent statements that she's made over the course of the investigation. You know, you talk about, she says, I hit him and all these things. Her first statement to the police is nothing of the sort. That comes after the police leave and she meets with the family, has an epiphany, calls the police back and says, I think Karen said, did I hit him? And as the investigation went on and on, that kind of morphed into, I hit him. So I think, you know, that's certainly going to be a primary focus of her cross-examination, as is the text chain between these family members, which don't make sense. I mean, they bring witnesses to their house to be interviewed by Michael Proctor and other cops, and then they're live texting what's happening in these interviews, telling each other she's telling them everything. This is very
Well, wasn't that the idea
behavior.
She's telling them everything, like telling too much about the relationship between John O'Keefe and Karen Read? Not that anything to do with the killing, but the idea, like, you're talking about their dirty laundry.
I think that's a hard sell, again, and you have to look at the full context of these messages. I mean, there are messages saying, tell them the guy, their close friend, by the way, but privately, tell them the guy never went in the house. That's a damning message. Why would these people say the story you've got to sell to the media is tell them the guy never went in the house? I mean, you saw Jennifer McCabe today appear to get emotional.
Yeah.
I'm not sure she did. I mean, it looked...
Well, second time she testified, you know, it's about a few years old.
Well, she said when she found him that she got all choked up and nothing came out today. But when you listen to the 911 call, which will come in probably in her direct tomorrow, she's as cool as a cucumber.
Shock?
It's not her friend John O'Keefe lying dead on the lawn, it's a man.
Yeah.
And then when you see the dash cam video of the police car, she literally turns her back and appears very calm, cool, collected.
I hope everybody can follow this, by the way, because you and I know this case very well. Hopefully we're explaining it perfectly to everybody. I want to know your opinion about the jury view. I'm torn about jury views, whether they're helpful or not. Going to 34 Fairview, Brian Albert's home, where John O'Keefe's body was found, do you think that helped the jury at all? And who did it help?
It helped the prosecution a little, only because of the timing of when it occurred. It occurred way too early in the case. None of the witnesses who were inside of the house or in that vicinity had even testified. If they had, I think that would favor the defense. I mean, you talked about Brian Albert not coming out. The windows that were his bedroom are, I mean, you could spit from those windows to the flagpole. It's that close if you've ever been to that yard. The jury doesn't know that right now, so they may not be taking that in. All these people inside who apparently didn't hear a car go screeching in reverse, 25 miles an hour, smash into John O'Keefe. They didn't hear it, but we don't know, the jury doesn't know how far away that is, what happened. Nobody saw a body that should have been lying on the lawn. Literally, none of them. They all drove right by it with their bright lights pointing right where the body was. The jury may not yet have that in sight. So
Snowplow driver didn't see it either, apparently.
Snowplow driver didn't see it either.
By the way, I'm pushing you because I know which position you take, so it's not necessarily, I'm kind of divided about what I believe about happened. I think we both can concede. Big mistake for Karen Read to do media interviews in the midst of an investigation before her retrial. How much of an effect do you think that's having on the jury, and why do you think she did it?
It's hard to tell how much of an effect it's having, other than to say at this point it appears to be their strongest evidence, which is, again, why did you do it?
Because she basically says, she speculates, did she hit him?
It's a mistake to do those kinds of things during, that are going to be used against you at a trial. Now, a lot of those videos were made during the first trial. I'm sure the assumption was there won't be a second trial, but there is a second trial, so there's no question it hurts. I can only assume that they chose to do it to just kind of get the story out to somehow favor them, but there's no question, at least as it's being used in the second trial, it doesn't favor them.
Do you think she's going to take the stand? She's been very vocal to the media outside court. She's been very vocal in these media interviews. She didn't take the stand the first time. I wonder, do you think she'll, what advantage would there be for her to take?
I don't think, first of all, it's unnecessary, and I think it would be too risky. And, I'm obviously not counseling her on what she does. But no, I don't think she'll take the stand.
I have to ask you this question. You're free to not ask it any which way. I know you represent Turtle Boy. Anything you want to say about that? We talked before that you're limited in what you can say. Anything you can say about it?
No, I should keep those thoughts to myself.
That's
for now.
fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Okay, so what is another piece of prosecution evidence you're going to be looking out for? Because they talked about the battery evidence that was going to be important. Is there another piece of evidence that you're going to be looking out for the prosecution that the defense really needs to counteract?
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is the prosecution accident reconstruction person, because they know what's coming from the defense side. They have fought like hell to keep it out. Even today, they were there arguing these witnesses shouldn't be allowed to testify. So at the first trial, the person they used to do their accident reconstruction was a Massachusetts State Police trooper who, to be kind, was not a good witness. They've hired a private company. We'll have to see what they have to say. But again, they can't just neutralize the defense witnesses. They have to carry it and convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the defense witnesses are bad. That's going to be a tough burden.
This is a tough case, let me tell you. We went through a lot of it. Mark Bederow, thank you so much for coming on.
Sure,
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.